what makes you proud of your tribe? Who my father was and who his father was. Well, you go far back enough, who's everybody's father? Adam alayhi salam, which means we're all essentially from the tribe of humanity, we're all equal. You see? So tribal superiority becomes a serious problem. You cannot claim superiority based on race if all human beings are equal. They have fundamental equal rights.
Before starting this video series, head on over to bayyinah.com/Dhul-Hijjah to download our free guided workbook on the Prophet's Road to Hajj to use and study with as a companion to this Dhul-Hijjah video series.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina liyaghfira laka Allahu ma taqaddama min dhanbika wa ma ta'akhkhar ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. I'd like to start by welcoming all of you for this evening's program. Some of you that survived tonight will also be here tomorrow morning and the day after, inshallah. We have quite a tall order ahead of us. I wanted to give everybody some perspective on what I'm going to try to cover this evening. I usually start with a very optimistic ambition that I'm going to finish up until a certain point. I never end up getting there, but I'm going to keep hope alive, inshallah. So the intention behind this series is actually in respect and in light of the coming of the Hajj season. And of course, this is one of the two main events of the year, the spiritual year for every Muslim, the month of Ramadan and the season of Hajj, where we commemorate certain things. And, you know, there are several lessons to learn from both of those. And particularly when it comes to Hajj, we ascribe the lessons of Hajj and the legacy of Hajj to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Right? And of course, he's the one who built the Kaaba, and the sacrifice and the rituals, all of them are tied directly to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you'll find very commonly among Muslims, the khutbah, the talks, the reminders of the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam surrounding the events of Hajj. But I think there's a piece that needs to be added to that equation. In fact, we will be talking about Ibrahim alayhi salam, but we'll talk about him at the very end of this series. Where I think we should begin is the life of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I call this series the Road to Hajj, the Prophet's Road to Hajj, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we need to understand how we got here. How did we get to the point where we get to make the Hajj, right? And that is, in a sense, you can think of it as one of the main objectives, if not the main objective, in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His mission was to actually establish the Hajj, which actually meant establishing Islam itself. So in order for Hajj to truly be established, the idols obviously had to be destroyed. And in order for the goal of Hajj to be established, that is the reason for which Ibrahim alayhi salam built the house. And our messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from the descendants of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. And he came to finish what Ibrahim alayhi salam started thousands of years ago, right? So in a sense, his objective is actually the same objective as that of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam had made a dua that people should come here and come to this house from all corners of the world. You know, min kulli fajjin amiq, from every nook and cranny, every valley, every open road, people should come here. But that didn't happen for thousands of years. Ibrahim alayhi salam built that house, and this was not a place where people were coming to worship Allah and Allah alone for thousands of years, maybe more than 4,000 years. And in fact, if you were born at that time, around the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you would not think of the Kaaba as a place where Allah alone is worshipped. In fact, you would think of it more as a temple where multiple idols are. It's a multi-religious temple. What that means is people of different religions. Some people believe in Lat, some believe in Manat, some believe in Uzza, some believe in other idols, whatever idol you believe in, this is our central place to keep all of your religious idols. And you can perform, there's some rituals they have in common and other rituals, each of their religious preferences their own, and they do their own religious sort of preferences. So it's a poly-religious society. You ever seen like in airports nowadays in America, very little, I've seen one or two in England, but they'll have like a multi-faith prayer room in the airport, right? So they'll have like the Book of Mormon and a Bible and the Quran and like the Vedas from the Hindus and all that stuff sitting on the side. They won't put anything on the murals. They'll keep it neutral. So whatever you want to do, you can do. So you could be praying 2 rak'ah while somebody's imploring Jesus and somebody else is calling on Saint Nicholas and somebody else is, speaking to their Hindu god, etc., or multiple gods, all in the same room at the same time. This is what the Kaaba had become. And it had been that way for many, many centuries until the coming of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I have many, many objectives in front of me. The first of them is something, particularly when I've come to Fort Worth, I've talked to you guys about this particular piece of the seerah. So I'll start with that. It should take me about 10 minutes. But really what I want to get into is the last 3 to 5 years of the Prophet's mission, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're going to take a closer look at that and a particular surah that's zooming in on the objective of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that time. And understanding that history is really, really essential. It's because of another reason that I'll explain in about 30 minutes from now. And that is, how does the Quran record history? Like the Quran does many things. One of the things it does is it records history. So we're going to get to that in about 30 minutes. But before then, I want to start with some things about the landscape in which the Prophet ﷺ receives revelation. We all know he receives revelation at the age of 40, and he's now delivering this message early in Makkah to the Quraysh. And something that's not very commonly known is that the main opposition to the Prophet ﷺ was not the average people. It was not what you call nowadays the lower class or the middle class. The opposition of the Prophet ﷺ was the political class and the upper social and economic class. The billionaires, the multimillionaires and the billionaires of the time and the politicians of the time, these were the main opponents of the Prophet ﷺ. So if you hear names, even growing up as Muslim, you heard the names Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl, Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, right? You've heard these names before. Each one of them is either from the billionaire class or they're from the political class, right? And they're both together. So a quick comment is important about the relationship between power and money, because some of these people are in power and some of these people have a lot of money, right? And these two things, power and money, have always been married to each other, even though they're not always in the same hands. So in some cases, they're in the same hands. So you'll have, for example, in some countries in the world today, you'll have the royal family. They've got majority of the money and they've got all the power, right? So kings concentrate money and power in one, right? And then you have other places in the world, like it's becoming clear now about the country in which we live, that there is the facade or the pretend that it's a democracy. But in reality, there's only two things in power. There are people with political power and there are people with money. And actually, more so, it's the people with money that control the people with political power, and everybody else likes to pretend they're living in a democracy where everybody's vote counts equally, right? So it's a pretend society. But in reality, those two elements have always been there throughout history, and they're always going to be there, right? That's just the nature of how power structures happen in society. Just some nations are more honest about it than others. That's all it is, right? So you might have, for example, the power belongs not just in the hands of politicians, the power belongs in the hands of the military. And there are countries in the world that if you come from one of these countries, you already know. They'll have elections and a different president will come in, different prime minister will come in, different party will come in, but everybody knows it's really the military that runs the country. Everybody knows. Look, we're all pretending that it's voting and elections and who's the prime minister and president, but behind it is Big Brother who says, hey, by the way, toe the line or you're not going to be around for the next election, or somehow there's going to be some charge against you or whatever, or you might disappear, right? So it's really the politicians that are in power, right? Now, this is, by the way, the same is true of the Catholic Church and the Roman Empire, right? The Catholic Church, and this was a third dimension actually, which I also want to introduce to you. So there's money, there's power, and then there's religion. So I'll introduce the third factor: money, power, and religion. So what happens in society is kings needed a way to make sure that the society remains loyal to the king, right? The society must remain loyal to the king. So what kings usually did was they kept a priest class. Like the pharaohs had their magicians and their priest class. Or in the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, he had the people that were interpreting the dream for him, remember? These were the spiritual saints or whatever they were, the mystics of that time, the religious class, the clergy. Just like the Roman Empire had the Catholic Church, right? So there's this religious class, and their job is two things. Their job is not just to teach religion to the people, but through teaching the religion, they're teaching people to do two things. One, give charity not to each other, not to the poor, give charity to the church, right? Number one. And two, pray for the king or pray for the queen. God save the king, God save the queen. They got two jobs. They got to collect money from the people for the sake of their salvation, and they've got to make sure people remain loyal to the king because God has blessed the king to be king. God has endorsed the king, right? So the religion, its role was to make sure people stay in line. That was actually its role. Now, it's interesting what's happened in our times. Religions become largely irrelevant for newer generations, right? So their parents were much more church-going, temple-going, even masjid-going, and the next generation is not. So the power structures had to figure out a new religion. How do they congregate people? How do they get people to be loyal? So the new religious entity actually became media. The media has, in a sense, social media or mass media, entertainment media, in a sense, started replacing religion in our societies. So you used to have religious structures that are constantly feeding a certain kind of message to the people, but now it's media entities that are, spreading a certain kind of message to the people. But that's a discussion for another time. Coming back to the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, where we get all of this from. The Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he first declares his message, La ilaha illallah, this is a huge religious problem, number one. Because if you're saying there's only one God, all of the religious varieties inside the temple of Kaaba, all of them are gone. None of them you cannot coexist with there's only one God. Every other one of those religions are okay with the coexistence of other religions in this locality. They're okay with, you can believe what you want, you can believe what you want, you can have your idol, you can have your idol, you can have your idol, but the Prophet ﷺ is coming with something that doesn't accept any other idols. It doesn't accept any compromise on God. There's only one. And he's claiming that this house, pretty early on, he's claiming that this house was never meant to be a temple at all. It was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam for the worship of one true God. So you're actually violating the sanctity of a masjid, basically, right? So there's a big religious problem here. There's also a political problem. The political problem is Islam is coming and saying things like, we're all children of Adam alayhi salam. And all children of Adam alayhi salam were honored. Well, if we're all children of Adam, that means quite literally all of us are genetically equal. Even though we're genetically varied, you can come from this tribe or that tribe or the other tribe. And what makes you proud of your tribe? Who my father was and who his father was. Well, you go far back enough, who's everybody's father? Adam alayhi salam, which means we're all essentially from the tribe of humanity, we're all equal. You see? So tribal superiority becomes a serious problem. You cannot claim superiority based on race if all human beings are equal. They have fundamental equal rights. So this was another problem. Now the Quraysh cannot claim superiority. Even within them, they had hierarchies, and they can't claim that anymore. There were other problems. And these problems started emerging as the Quran progressed. For example, when Allah was saying, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُ الْيَتِيمِ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Early revelations are talking about someone who pushes the orphan and doesn't feed the poor. This is not talking to poor people. This is talking to rich people. This is talking about the rich people that are pushing the orphan around, that are manipulating the poor in society, that are cheating people in business, al-mutaffifin, right? So the Quran is coming after economic corruption, which is not done by the poor, actually. The poor barely have any money to be corrupt with anyway. It's going after the very, very rich of society. And by the way, when you make rich people angry, then they don't just take it quietly. They don't take it. They have a direct connection to the government. So rich people take their complaint to the authorities, and the authorities say, Hey, we'll take care of it for you. We'll get some thugs after him. We'll get him beat up on the street. Don't worry, your name's not going to get sullied. You'll stay out of it. We'll take care of it for you, right? We'll have indirect ways of working this out. So money, religion, power, all married to each other. And the Quran comes and it's cutting through all of it from the very beginning. There's something that, just again, from the historical landscape, you must understand, is that the Quraysh freshly came out of an incident that's called Am al-Fil, right? The year of the elephant. And Abraha saw a problem with Makkah. Why did Abraha in Yemen see a problem with Makkah? Because the Kaaba was a religious center. So all the tribes in the region, when they wanted to show their religious respect, where would they go? They'd go to the Kaaba. And because of that, the Kaaba became a center of religious tourism. You can call it that, religious tourism. So a lot of people are coming there, staying there, doing their worship there, which means their hospitality industry, their hotel industry, their restaurant, they're making good money by people coming in from everywhere. And he's not able to get anybody to come to his center because this is the religious center. The other reason is because it's the religious center, all the trade runs through Kaaba, actually, through Makkah. So they're buying and selling in Yemen, and they're going through Makkah, and they're gonna buy and sell the products they bought in Yemen. They're gonna go sell them there in Syria, and then they're gonna buy from Syria. And by the way, Syria then connected to Europe, right? So European products also. They're gonna buy all that. They're gonna come through Makkah, take it to Yemen, and sell it from Yemen all the way to the Africas. So the Africa, Asia, and Africa-Europe trade is run through the canal, which is Makkah. And the only reason that works is all the idols are there. That's the only reason that works. So when Islam comes and the Quran comes and Rasul says, there's no God worthy of worship except Allah. This is a huge, not just a religious problem. This is an economic problem. This is a political problem. Because if we destroy all the idols, all the tribes in the region will become our enemy. They'll all hate us because we attack their idols. Then we cannot go do our business the way we normally do. We can't do it. So our economic pipeline will die. And nobody will come visit this house. So no more tourism money coming in. So we will go bankrupt overnight. And people will kill us. So now they had to preserve that. Now Abraha wanted to replace the Kaaba with his own center. So he brought an army of elephants. And we know what happened with the army of elephants. And what did that do for the region? Everybody in all the tribes in Arabia, their mythology that the Arabs are holy people, the Qurayshis are holy people, and the Kaaba is sacred and it's protected by God, meaning these are the rightful custodians of the Kaaba, and that's why they should be in power. Their power got even more validated by the miraculous event of the army of the elephants. Even the elephants couldn't mess with these people. So you better watch out, right? So everybody's leaving them alone until the coming of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so when this conflict, this ideological conflict begins, it eventually escalates to a point where, as you all know, the Prophet ﷺ is nearly killed, and he's exiled once. He goes to Ta'if, and that happens. Even before that, he was exiled once before then. And when the final attempt on his life also happens, he makes a secret hijrah all the way to Medina, along with some of the Muslims that had already made their way to Medina before him, right? So now Rasulullah ﷺ is in Medina. And within the first year, the Quraysh already know this is going to become a bigger problem because we couldn't contain this problem. Now, because he's in Medina, he might have free room to operate. Some other tribes might start becoming Muslim. So the Quraysh weren't sure, should we fight the Prophet? Should we fight Muhammad, kill him and his followers, follow them all the way to Medina and kill them? Or should we? They're not our problem anymore. They left. So, chalo, it's somebody else's problem now. We don't have to deal with it. So there were two opinions in Makkah. Should we go after them, or should we leave them alone? And if they become more powerful, well, that's also good because we're kind of related. So it's one of our guys that became powerful anyway. So there was these debates going on between the Democrats and the Republicans in Makkah, right? And in the middle of that debate, what the Arabs were doing, the Qurayshis were doing, they were still conducting business as usual. They had their trade caravans. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded, as he prepared a small coalition of Muslims, he commanded that these trade caravans should start getting attacked. So their business is starting to get attacked. which is completely justified because you expelled them from their homes and stole their properties. You're just fighting back to get what was yours. So now the Prophet ﷺ is attacking the economic lifeline of Makkah. It's almost like you're trying to get in the way of a gas pipeline nowadays, or an oil pipeline nowadays, or a sea route nowadays. And if somebody messes with a sea route or tries to block some ships or stops a gas pipeline, what happens next? F-16s get released, right? Drone strikes start happening, isn't it? This is war. This is serious war. So they were still debating, should we go after Muhammad or not? When they found out a couple of caravans got attacked, we can't have this. This has got to go. So now the hawks, the aggressive ones, won this debate whether or not we should attack the Muslims, and they come out to attack the Muslims in what became the Battle of Badr. Right? So this happens very, very quickly. The escalation happens very, very quickly. You guys know already, I don't have to give you a review of the Battle of Badr, but the Muslims gave them a pretty humiliating defeat in the Battle of Badr. And as a result of that defeat, now the Quraysh have two problems. One, the entire region knows they lost. They didn't even lose to elephants. And they lost to a couple of people they call Aradhiluna Badi al-Ra'i, riffraff, homeless people, criminals, outlaws, slaves, weak, stupid people, and they lost to them. This is looking pretty bad for them. On top of that, the Arabs had a culture which I don't think exists anywhere anymore. Their women would humiliate them a lot. So, of course, you don't know anything about that. So they came home and they're like, oh, what kind of man are you coming back defeated? Should have stayed home like the rest of us women. What difference did it make? So now they're hearing these like really sharp, scathing. Women back then had really sharp tongues. They knew exactly what to say to get to your pride. And they're getting roasted when they get home, right? And they're burning with the desire for revenge. Like this is bad. So they don't go after losing Badr. They don't go home happy. They go home with rage. And they're no longer filled with fear. They're filled with the desire for revenge. So they don't come the next time with 1,000. They come with between 3,000 and 4,000, right? And they even actually brought their women with them on the battlefield for Uhud. The reason they brought their women on Uhud is they said, even if we get scared and we're trying to run, the women in the back are going to taunt us. Are you going to run? Right? And if they run, their women can't run as fast. So our women are going to get taken by the Muslims, which is a questioning of our manhood. So if we're real men, we ain't scared. We're even going to bring our women out. So they brought their women out that are singing and dancing in the back, and they came in the front. That was the military of Uhud that came to attack. Again, I don't have to go through the big, long details of Uhud, but one thing you should know. In the beginning, the Muslims handed to them really good. It was kind of like the playoff game last night, okay? It was what the Nuggets experienced last night is what they were experiencing on the battlefield. So when that was happening, the Quraysh actually ran to the hills. But who was in the back? Their women. But they dropped their armor because they couldn't run away from the Muslims fast enough. So they dropped their armor and their shields because that's heavy stuff. And they started running for the hills. And the women are standing there and they passed by the women and they even beat their women to the hills. And the women are like, wait for us. And the women can't run as fast as those men. So they're running after them. And the Sahaba report, as we were running after the enemy, all we could see was the back of the heels of the women that were holding up their dresses and running to the mountains. Like they didn't even see the soul. And this is the first half of Uhud. Then, of course, when Muslims saw the shields and swords lying on the field, they left their post. Some of them left their post, and Khalid ibn Walid, who wasn't Muslim yet, came around and basically backtracked on them, right, and flanked them. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ was almost killed. He was injured in 3 places in his face. He was bled unconscious. There were multiple attempts on his life in that time, and this was the first kind of victory of the Quraysh, sort of victory. And they talked a lot of trash by the end of that. لَنَا الْعُزَّى وَلَا عُزَّى لَكُمْ. We have Uzza, their false god. The Uzza, by the way, is the feminine form of Al-A'az, from Aziz. Like Allah's name, Al-Aziz, right? Al-A'az is the one with the most might. Al-Uzza is the female goddess with the most might. That's where Al-Uzza comes. So, لَنَا الْعُزَّى وَلَا عُزَّى لَكُمْ. Right? And Allah responded with an ayah of the Quran. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ مَوْلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَأَنَّ الْكَافِرِينَ لَا مَوْلَى لَهُمْ. Allah is the Mawla and they have no Mawla. right? So anyway, so they left. They, of course, they also mutilated the body of Hamza radiallahu anhu. They did all of this. 70 of the very important Sahaba were killed. You have to understand the key point here that I'm kind of trying to lead myself to for you guys. And that is that the majority of the funds of the battle, because for battle you need funds. The majority of the money was coming from the Ansar. You guys know who the Ansar are? The helpers in Medina, right? So the Muhajirun, the Meccans, they came basically with almost nothing. So they didn't come with me. So all majority of the money and the majority of the numbers were actually coming from the Ansar. When the Ansar, major numbers of the Ansar are killed in Uhud, each one of those people that's killed was the head of a household. And each head of a household was basically the main source of income for their family. And the main source of income for even the muhajir that they were supporting. So 70 of the breadwinners and income earners have died overnight. They've died. And the swords and the shields that were left behind of the Muslims, each sword and each shield is the equivalent nowadays of you purchasing a house. In other words, your life savings go towards a shield. Your life savings go to a couple of swords. So when the Quraysh picked up the swords and the shields of the Muslims lost enormous amounts of wealth, and they lost their breadwinners all in one go. So this is already a poor society. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. The Quran tells us that the Muhajirun, the Ansar, the helpers in Medina, they were giving the Muhajirun preference over themselves, even though they themselves were starving. And now, on top of that, there's massive bankruptcy. So the Muslims are now debilitated. They're deeply injured. مِن بَعْدِ مَا أَصَابَهُمُ الْقَرْحِ. Like Allah describes. Even after a deep injury struck them. Qarh in Arabic means when the arrow goes through your skin and penetrates the bone. Gets through the flesh and gets to the bone. That's called a qarh. Any injury is called a jarh or a jurh. But a deep injury that penetrates the bone is called a qarh. Allah uses the word qarh to describe what happened in Uhud. Now, so this has happened in Uhud. Now the Muslims are injured. Because the Muslims are injured, the Quraysh go back. They feel good, but then they feel kind of stupid too. They're like, man, we should have just finished them off. They were down. We could have just ended Islam altogether. I don't know why because they got scared in the end again and they ran off, actually. That's what happened. But now they're starting to question, man, we could have just ended this problem once and for all, but we're not going to take that risk again. We're not going to go after them by ourselves, because they knew, in a sense, from the Meccan perspective, from the Kafir Qurayshi perspective, they actually got lucky. They were losing that battle too. It's just that the Muslims made one strategic mistake. Otherwise, they had lost that battle too. They know that. They're not going to risk going after the Prophet ﷺ by themselves again. So what do? They start having conversations with the Ahbash and the different tribes in the area and saying, hey, look, Islam is a problem for us. We've already gone to war with these people twice, Muhammad and his followers. We say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they don't, right? Him and his followers, they become a real problem, but soon they won't just be our problem. They're going to become your problem too. So if you want, we should all join hands and go and finish this problem together. We can overrun them with our numbers. We'll make a coalition, a United Nations of Kufr, and and we're going to come and just hit them all at once, right? So because we'll overrun them with our numbers. And by the way, one reason they gave was, oh, this is going to be a problem for you later. Another reason they gave was, listen, we fought them on the battlefield twice. I don't think we should go into the battlefield. I think we should go attack the city itself. Which city are they talking about? Medina. Now, when you engage in military action in a city, it's completely different than when you engage in military action on the battlefield. On the battlefield, who's going to die on both sides? Soldiers. Who's going to die in the city? Men, women, children, innocent civilians, casualties. This is going to be a genocide. And they're okay with that. They're like, listen, let's go into Medina and kill every last man, woman, and child. Let's end all of this. And then we have an entire city that just came into our spoils, and we can distribute the wealth easily.
By the way, they're already injured. They're barely able to defend themselves. We have a lot of their weapons that they had anyway. So this is a good time to attack. And a lot of the tribes in the area are like, this is easy money. Yeah, count me in. I think I'm gonna vote for this. We'll send some of our troops too. They will call it to their public. You know what they're gonna say? We're trying to save our way of life. Because Muhammad is a threat to our way of life. We're trying to save freedom in the Arabian Peninsula. We're trying to save the democracy of multiple gods. That's what they're going to say to them. But in their actual meeting, what is this about? Money from the beginning to the end. That's all it's about. That's the only incentive, right? You can go, if you study modern history, you're going to find, compare the actual events and the actual history with what the media was saying about those events. The media was saying we're going to Iraq to spread democracy, or we're going to Afghanistan to spread democracy and human rights and all that fun jazz, yeah? Because these people need to be brought in, and we're going to bomb them into because bombing people makes them modernized. That's how modern education, fast track education, explosive education, right? So that's how we're going to do it. But what was the reality? The reality was, oh, well, there's a Russian neighbor here, there's pipelines there's, gas reservoir, oil resources. And what happened with the oil prices at the time? If you study oil prices and resource prices during the Iraq War, right? And some of the strategic alliances in the region and the economic impact of the Afghan War, and you'll find this wasn't about national security. And this wasn't about, democracy. There was none of these things. In the end, it was all about just resources. And that's what wars have always been about. And this is what the Quraysh are thinking about. It's a very simplistic reading to think, oh, this was Islam versus kufr. Their ultimate kufr was their ibadah of the dirham. It was a worship of money. That's what it actually was. So now, getting to the point, they are getting ready for a massive assault made up of multiple tribes. Each tribe you can call a group or a faction. A group in Arabic is called hizb. The collection of them are called ahzab. So commenting on the legions that were collected, that came together to kill all the Muslims in Medina itself, this was the battle of Al-Ahzab. And commenting on it also came Surah Al-Ahzab. Surah number 33 of the Quran is commenting on this situation. I'm going to give you some brief pointers on what happened in this situation. So first of all, they came, some reports say about 10,000 men were coming now. So 10,000 soldiers are coming. You know that Salman al-Farisi's suggestion was to build a trench that kind of barricades them from entering so easily, right? Because the Medina is kind of fortified in the back with mountains and on the side with mountains. So the front trench has to be dug. And this trench had to be dug in 6 days. 6 days. So in a sense, the entire city was busy digging this trench under the instruction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? So now this happens, this is about the 5th year of Shawwal, and Allah mentions this in the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udhkuru ni'matallahi alaykum. Those of you who have iman, remember the favor of Allah done on you. Idh ja'atkum junud, when armies came to attack you. Not one army, junudun. Armies came to attack you. فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ رِيحًا وَجُنُودًا لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. So here's what happens. In the ancient times, when you tried to attack a fort or a fortified city, you just build a camp around the city. You don't try to attack it because they're fortified, right? What's going to happen? Eventually inside, they'll run out of food. They'll run out of resources. They'll start starving and they'll give up. So you just stay outside and wait for them to drown themselves or starve themselves, and then they'll give up. This is how fortresses or encampments were conquered in the past. So the Quraysh are thinking, we're just going to camp outside. Sure, we can't get through the trench. We tried. We failed a few times. We'll just wait this out. They're going to run out of food, water, supplies. They're going to have to come out sooner or later. And when they do, we're going to get them. So they're waiting. But are the Quraysh alone? Let me ask you now. Are the Quraysh alone? They've got lots of tribes with them, don't they? All of those tribes have spent a lot of money to come and camp here. Setting up a military base is expensive. Setting up the tents, feeding the animals, feeding the soldiers, keeping everything secure. Cooking the food, setting up the makeshift hospital if somebody gets sick, all that stuff. They have to set up an entire makeshift city. And they have to set that up for weeks and weeks and weeks. While the Muslims are, stuck inside the city of Medina. And what does Allah do? Allah says in the Quran, فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ رِيحًا. We sent a wind against them. So a windstorm comes in the desert. What happens? The sand goes in people's eyes. The sand goes into people's mouth. It goes in the animals' eyes. It starts turning over the fire that they were cooking the food in, and the tent goes on fire, and the horses go running away, and the camels are running wild, and like they can't control this. It's getting out of hand to the point where some of the tribes started giving up. Like this, I mean, I thought it was going to be easy money. I think I'm going to go home. And some of them start trickling away, and eventually Quraysh realized this ain't going to work. So they go back home too. The war actually never happened. The entire campaign failed. There was a campaign for genocide. They were okay with genocide, right? Because they're going to go inside a city and engage in military combat. But that campaign failed, and now they left. Now what happens as a result? The Quraysh look really, really bad. Because now, not only have they lost to the Muslims 3 times, they cost the other tribes a lot of money too. Y'all are the ones who talked me into going with you because it was going to be easy money. Easy money. We just went outside in the desert and barbecued ourselves for a few weeks and then went back home. And it cost me all that money too. If you ever have another request, go talk to somebody else. I don't want to talk to you. Now they've lost face. They've lost street cred with the people that used to respect them as the high and mighty Quraysh. You understand? So this is a huge, diminishing of the power of Quraysh and the political capital of Quraysh in the region. Now, with all of that said, we now have to take the next step. And this is really what I wanted to talk to you about. All of what I just said to you was setting the stage for the history that I really want to share with you that leads up to our study of inshallah, Surah Al-Fath, a little bit of this Surah Al-Fath, which is going to be tomorrow, inshallah. But the Prophet ﷺ, about a year and a few months later, sees a dream. And he sees the dream that he's making Hajj, making Umrah. He's making Umrah. And he's shaving his head. And he shares this dream with the Muslims, telling them, I've seen this dream, we're going to go make Umrah. And the problem is, you go make Umrah in Makkah. And the people of Makkah, a little over a year ago, maybe 14, 15 months ago, they were at your door, thirsty for the blood of every last one of your men, women, and children. They were genocidal maniacs. And now you've seen a dream that you're going to go there and perform Umrah. The thing is, for the Arabs, wearing a sword is like putting your clothes on. Like you feel naked without your sword. So it's not like they don't even consider it armed. It's kind of like when you go a little bit outside of Dallas-Fort Worth in Texas. You shouldn't assume that someone is unarmed. Right? Like, I've taken a few road trips, and my favorite thing about the gas stops here is the sign that says, "We don't call the cops," and it's a picture of a gun. Right? Right? This is the Arabs of the time. They got to carry their sword. But when you go for war, you've got shields, swords, arrows, bow and arrow, spears. You got the whole 9 yards. But when you're going for Hajj, you're only carrying your self-defense weapon, not much more, and you're wearing ihram. Once you pass the miqat, you're wearing ihram. So you're basically exposed. And you're taking animals for slaughter in the hundreds. In fact, the report tells us 1,400 Muslims agreed to go with the Prophet ﷺ for this journey, knowing that where they're going, the people there want each one of them dead and don't care about who's innocent and who's not. They don't care about any of that. So the Prophet ﷺ sees this dream. The Sahaba are ready to go because if the Prophet sees a dream, it might as well be revelation. It is revelation. So they've all agreed. Now the hypocrites, which were also in Medina, they were really happy about this dream. They were actually really happy about this dream because they're like, oh, they came to kill you here and they couldn't. Now you want to go get yourself killed yourself. This is awesome. Because they thought Islam in Medina is also a problem for them. They thought their life was good before Islam came to Medina. So if the Prophet ﷺ gets killed, the munafiqun are very happy about it. So they were really happy that the Prophet ﷺ said he saw this dream and they're going to go make Umrah. They're like, yeah, Rasul, Alf Mabruk, make dua for you. And Surah Al-Fath, we'll see a commentary on that too. Allah will actually talk about that they were happy about it. Anyway, The rest of the, so what that tells us is for the vast majority of the people, almost all 1,400 of the people that went were true believers, except one person. We'll get to the story of that one person later on, right? But they all, now they've decided to leave. So they reach Miqat al-Madinah Dhul Hulayfa, where the Prophet ﷺ consecrates the animals. Now these animals are marked for Hajj, and he makes the 2 rak'ah. Now it's officially known. By the way, the Quraysh have gone to war 3 times, but war is not just about the battle and fight. War is also about intelligence gathering, isn't it? So if you're moving 1,400 people and you're getting all these animals ready and you've left Medina, what's that going to show the Quraysh? It's going to show they're coming and they're headed our way. So the Quraysh wants to make sure that they never reach Makkah. They got wind of it and they want to make sure they never reach Makkah. Why is that important? It's important because if the Muslims reach Makkah, Makkah is sacred land. Not by Islamic standards, also by mushrik standards. So the mushrikun are not allowed to kill each other in Makkah. And this is one of the things that gives Quraysh their status. Whoever comes here is safe. So if the Muslims cross the border into Makkah, then they won't be able to kill them. So the only chance they have to kill the Muslims is when they are on the road, when they're on the way to Makkah. That's what they have to do. So they get wind that the Muslims are coming. Rasulullah ﷺ sent Busr bin Sufyan al-Khuza'i as a scout. From our side, also somebody was sent with a fast horse to go check what the Quraysh are doing. And he comes back and he comes back and says they're actually getting ready for war. So the Prophet ﷺ, he leaves directly for Makkah anyway. He reaches a place called Usfan, which is kind of a stopping point. He reaches there, and the Muslim scout who was gathering intelligence, he came running back, and he says, "Inna Qurayshan jama'u laka jumu'an." He said, the Quraysh have gathered everybody they can. They're ready. وَقَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكَ الْأَحَابِيشِ. And they've gathered some of the tribes that are around the area that are known for their assassins. So some of their violent tribes, they've been able to gather as many thugs as possible, basically. وَهُمْ مُقَاتِلُوكَ وَصَادُّوكَ عَنِ الْبَيْتِ وَمَانِعُوكَ. They are going to fight you. They're going to prevent you from getting to the house. They will stop you at all cost. They are determined. Okay. So at this point, Rasulullah ﷺ says, "Ya wayha Quraysh, laqad akalathum al-harbu." So the Prophet ﷺ gathers the 1,400 Muslims that have come. Now they didn't come for war. They have left their house because the Prophet saw a dream ﷺ that they're going to make Umrah. So he's talking to his crowd, the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, what is wrong with the Quraysh? It's like war has consumed them. ماذا عليهم لو خلوا بيني وبين سائر العرب. Why can't they leave me be with the rest of the Arabs? Like, I'm not even in their face anymore. I'm not even bothering them anymore. Why they keep coming after me? فإنهم أصابوني كان الذي أرادوا وإن أظهرني الله عليهم دخلوا في الإسلام وافرين وإن لم يفعلوا قاتلوا وبهم قوة. He says, and if they attack me, which is what they want to do, then that's what Allah wills. Allah will give me victory against them. And they could have just entered Islam easily without any fight. They could have just done that. But why are they so bent on fighting? فما تظن قريش فوالله لا أزال أجاهد على الذي بعثني الله به حتى يظهره الله أو تنفرد هذه السالفة. He said, I swear by Allah, I will keep struggling for this mission that Allah has sent me with until Allah either gives me victory or this gets separated. تنفرد هذه السالفة. That's what the Prophet said. So he's making this declaration to his people that even though I told you we're going to go for Hajj, I, as your leader, am ready to get killed. I will go because Allah has given me this mission. I won't stop. And if they want to kill me, that's their business. Allah will deal with them. But until my neck is still connected to my head, I'm going to keep going. That's what the leader is telling them. What message does that send to all of the followers, right? Ashiru ayyuhan nas alayya. So then, but then he told them, why don't you tell me, people? I want to hear from you. أترون أن أميل إلى عيالهم وذراري هؤلاء الذين يريدون أن يصدون عن البيت. Because there's the Meccans and then there's the neighboring tribes of the Meccans that they're sending ahead to attack the Muslims. So kind of like, you've got the main city and then you've got smaller towns on the outskirts, right? So those smaller towns are the ones that are going to come attack. So the Prophet ﷺ said, What do you people think? Should we attack these smaller towns, and because they're coming to attack us, so we should do a retaliatory strike against them, and that way we will dwindle the numbers of Quraysh support. Then Quraysh will be all by themselves, right? Should we do that? فَإِنْ يَأْتُونَا كَانَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ قَدْ قَطَعَ عَيْنًا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Because if those people attack us, those side tribes, we can overpower them still, and Allah will have cut one of the, it's like, blindsiding the mushrikeen. They won't have as much support as they normally have. وَإِلَّا تَرَكْنَاهُمْ مَحْرُوبِينَ قَالَ أَبُو بَكْرٍ. So the Prophet ﷺ is basically testing the crowd and saying, should we go to war? What do you guys say? I think we can take some of these side scrubs that the Quraysh gathered, the bench players. So we take the bench out of the way, we only got the A players left to deal with. What do you people say? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq spoke up. He's actually realizes the Prophet ﷺ is testing the sentiments of the crowd. And why is the crowd being tested? Because they've gone to war with Quraysh 3 times. So the immediate answer is, yeah, of course, war. Right? Because that's the enemy and we fought them 3 times. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq speaks up and says, Ya Rasulullah, kharajta amidan li hadha al-bayt. Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you left with the intention for this house. Which house is he referring to? The Kaaba. La turidu qatla ahad. You don't want to kill anybody. Wala harba ahad. And you don't want to make war with anybody. I know you. He's not saying don't do it. He says, I know you don't want to. He's saying, I know you don't want to. You're just saying this to see what people want. But you don't want this. فَتَوَجَّهْ لَهُ. Then focus your attention towards the Kaaba itself. فَتَوَجَّهْ لَهُ. فَمَنْ صَدَّنَا عَنْهُ قَاتَلْنَاهُ. And whoever stops us, then we'll fight them. So we shouldn't preemptively strike. If they fight us, then we'll fight back. أُمْضُوا عَلَى اسْمِ اللَّهِ. Rasul ﷺ says, march in the name of Allah. March in the name of, carry on in the name of Allah. So this is now the consensus decision. We're marching in the name of Allah. Okay. Why this history is important is Rasulullah ﷺ, the first time we decided to make, according to Revelation, to visit the house of Allah, make tawaf of the house, do the sa'i, sacrifice the animal, shave the head, sacrifice the animal, all of that, all of those rituals that we now, constitute as Hajj. The first time that was going to happen was a life-risking venture. And all of them were subject to being executed just for making that intention. And the munafiqun were extremely happy over that decision. And the Quraysh were sharpening their knives over that decision. وَسَلَكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم طَرِيقًا وَعُرَّةً عِبْرَ ثَنِّيَةِ الْمِرَارِ وَهِيَ مَهْبِطُ الْحُدَيْبِيَّةِ. This is important. The Prophet ﷺ now knew they're coming this way. He's in Asfan. And he said, we have to take an alternative route because they're going to intercept us. Their military will intercept us. War will be inevitable. By the way, who's leading the charge on their side? They saw them from a distance, their scout. It was Khalid ibn Walid, who already caused us major damage when? In Uhud. Who's the only one who got through the trench. He got through the trench that the Quraysh couldn't get through. The only one with a small few that got through the trench to attack the Muslims was Khalid ibn Walid. So he's their most successful general, right? He actually, it's either him or one of his scouts, they saw the Muslims in Asfan. And they saw that they put all their shields, and not their shields, their swords and everything down, and they're making Dhuhr Salah. And he had this brilliant idea. He was like, yo, when they're praying is the best time to kill them all. How often do they do this? And somebody told him, I think their next Salah is Asr. They got another prayer called Asr. So this was Dhuhr, right? He's like, man, I missed the Dhuhr opportunity. I'll kill them all at Asr. So he's getting ready, and Allah reveals to the Prophet ﷺ a prayer called Salatul Khawf, the prayer of fear. In between Dhuhr and Asr was Salatul Khawf revelation. What is the revelation? Some of them will pray with the Prophet while others will stand guard, and they'll finish their prayer, and the other will join with the Prophet ﷺ. That was revealed in this time. He comes back for Asr. He's like, yo, that doesn't look like the same prayer. What happened? They're ready. So he's like, I gotta re-strategize. We gotta rethink our strategy here. So he goes back to Makkah to re-strategize. By the time he comes back, the Prophet has left Asfan. He's headed towards a place called Hudaybiyah. But to get to Hudaybiyah, you have to go through burnt, jagged rock. I don't know if you guys have been to, many desert, or burnt rock areas. Like Makkah, when you're driving, if you've ever gone to Umrah or something and you're driving between Makkah and Medina, you'll see the rocks in a distance. And they're mostly they're umless, they're very smooth rock. from a distance. But, you might have places like that in New Mexico. I think I've seen some here. And some places in California. You'll have rocks that are like very sharp. Like you can't put your foot on it. It'll cut right through, right? And it's coming on both sides, and it's not meant for, like, you can't go through their, 1,400 people and their animals. But they knew that's the only way they can make it, at least to Hudaybiyah. Hudaybiyah is right on the border of the neutral zone. Neutral zone means you're in Makkah, you can't be attacked, right? So to get to Hudaybiyah, which is not normally where you want to go, but to avoid the main road to Makkah, they took this road. And in that road, they bled. In that road, they got injured. And in that road, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam even told them, "Man yas'udu thaniyat al-mirar fa'innahu yahuttu ma hatta an bani Israel." This is whoever crosses this valley and goes through the hill of Mirar, whoever's going through this, 1,400 people and their animals going through this journey, they are going to go through what Bani Israel go through when Allah told them, "Udkhulul baba sujadan," enter the door, right? So this is your test, like the Israelites were tested when they were to enter the door. And he also promised every one of the people who went through the journey Jannah, except one person. And they were like, one person? And he said, the one with the red camel. He said, one person with the red camel. And they're like, who's this guy with the red camel? And turns out, all the way at the back of the caravan was a guy who said, have you seen my red camel? And they said, I think we heard about you. I'm pretty sure you should ask the Prophet ﷺ to pray for you. And he said, I'm not interested in your friend's prayer. I'm more interested in my camel. And that showed you that he wasn't really there for genuine reasons. He was the only munafiq there. And the Prophet ﷺ was given a revelation about him. Right? Which also indicates that everybody else who was on that journey were the truest of believers. Which will also be confirmed by Surah Al-Fath, the surah that was revealed at the end of this entire adventure. So now they're going. And they're traveling. Khalid ibn Walid comes back with reinforcements. At Asfan, nobody's there. They left. They've gone the unusual route towards what location? Hudaybiyah. So now he's going to rush back to see if he can cut them off before they get there, but they're already there. They already reached Hudaybiyah. Hudaybiyah was a well, a little bit of a hump, like a hill, right? And the well was dried up. So when they get there, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his camel stops. Actually, I want to read that to you. وسار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى إذا كان بالثنية التي يهبط بها عليهم منها بركت به راحلته. His camel just wouldn't move past Hudaybiyah. Their plan wasn't Hudaybiyah. Their plan was Makkah. It goes through Hudaybiyah, but their plan wasn't to stop at Hudaybiyah. But his camel stopped moving. فقال الناس حل حل فألحت. So the people started telling the camel حل حل, because in Arabic you speak to animals. And you have words for speaking to animals. So some people speak to animals in different ways. The Arabs actually had a full-on vocabulary. Aaqi, aaqi is how you speak to a crow. Now, if you say that loud enough, you'll know why. Aaqi, aaqi. Right? That's right? Hayya, halla, to get a camel to get up. Hal, hal, get up, get up. They have different words. And, people have different... I've seen actually videos on this, how to speak to animals. Because the Quran makes reference to this. يَنْعِقُ بِمَا لَا يَسْمَعُ إِلَّا دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً in the Quran. So I want you to know something about it. Different animals respond to different sounds. And you have this like shepherd who'll be like, or something, and then all the sheep show up. And somebody else tries it, and then they're like, nah, not you, bro. Try again. So they said, and the camel won't move. Now, sometimes a good animal, a good domesticated animal, like a horse or a camel, that usually obeys the master, becomes stubborn. And when it becomes stubborn, it's like, transmission failure. Like, it's no good, man. They don't listen no more. So it's not responding the way I wanted to. I'm pressing the accelerator. It's not moving. So there's something wrong. Time for some barbecue. You know what I'm saying? So فَقَالُوا خَلَأَتْ الْقَصْوَى. So the people said this Qaswa. Qaswa was the name of the Prophet's camel. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he was actually very attached to this camel. He had a very friendly relationship with Qaswa. So they said Qaswa has gone bad. Qaswa has lost its mind. خلأت القصوى خلأت القصوى. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما خلأت القصوى. The Prophet said, no. Qaswa, there's nothing wrong with Qaswa. وما ذاك لها بخلق. And it doesn't act this way at all. That's not her character. So the Prophet ﷺ knows the character even of an animal. Right? That's how intimately he knows the animal. وَلَكِنْ حَبَسَهَا حَابِسُ الْفِيلِ. It's a really beautiful hadith in Bukhari. He says, but the one who stopped the elephant has stopped her. Now, which elephant? The elephant in the time of the army of Abraha. Abraha wanted that elephant to charge and crash into the haram, and the elephant refused to move. And Allah is saying the same one who stopped that elephant from moving is the one who's stopping Qaswa from moving. What is Allah telling the Prophet ﷺ? If you go to Makkah now, there will be war. And just like Allah prevented violence from happening at the haram with the elephant, Allah is preventing violence from happening with Qaswa stopping now. We will not proceed further. We will camp here. That was the instruction. It's so remarkable that Allah protected the sanctity of the Kaaba with that elephant the same way He protected the sanctity of the Kaaba with Qaswa by stopping her at that moment. Okay, so now, كنا مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم 1400. We were 1400 with the Prophet ﷺ. وَالْحُدَيْبِيَّةِ بِئْرٌ. And the Hudaybiyah was basically, there was only one well at Hudaybiyah. فَنَزَحْنَاهَا فَلَمْ نَتْرُكْ فِيهَا قَطْرًا. So we drank from it a little, and pretty quickly there was not even a drop left. There was not even a drop left to drink. فَبَلَغَ ذَلِكَ النَّبِي صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. So this news reached the Prophet ﷺ. فَجَلَسَ عَلَى شَفِيرِهِ. So the Prophet ﷺ sat at the mouth of the well. دَعَا بِإِنَاءٍ مِّن مَاءٍ فَتَوَضَّأَ. So he asked for like a small pot of water, and he made wudu with the pot of water. ثُمَّ مَضْمَضَ وَدَعَا ثُمَّ صَبَّهُ فِيهَا. Then the Prophet ﷺ gargled some of that water and poured it into the well. فَتَرَكْنَاهَا غَيْرَ بَعِيدٍ. So we left the well, and not much later, ثُمَّ إِنَّهَا أَصْدَرَتْنَا مَا شِئْنَا نَحْنُ وَرِكَابَنَا. And then it started overflowing. The well started overflowing, and all of us drank, and all of our animals drank. 1,400 people drank the water, and camels, horses that came with 1,400 people drank the water, and the water wouldn't stop running. And this was one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. And this was also kind of a way of, reinforcing the iman of the believers who came at this time, who otherwise the munafiqun were thinking are going on a suicide mission, right? But now they're getting the feeling Allah is on their side. And now they're seeing these small miracles happen also. Like the one in the guy with the red camel is a small miracle that happened. And then making them to Hudaybiyah and the water coming out is another small miracle that's happened. So one after the other, these miracles start happening. ثم قال صلى الله عليه وسلم والذي نفسي بيده لا يسألوني خطة يعظمون فيها حرمات الله إلا أعطيتهم إياه. The Prophet ﷺ said something very strange in this moment. So right now they're feeling this miraculous gift from Allah has come. The water has poured out of the well. And in this moment, the Prophet ﷺ said, I swear by the one who holds my life in his hands, meaning I swear by Allah. They will not ask me for anything unless it violates the sanctity of Allah. I will give it to them. Now listen to that again. Basically, I'll put it in my own words. They will ask me whatever they want, and I will give it to them so long as it's not haram. That's an easy words now. So long as it's not haram, I will give it to them. Who's the they? It's the Quraysh. But nobody knows right now that there's going to be a negotiation. Nobody knows they're going to ask for anything. In fact, the Quraysh have never asked for anything. They've only wanted to kill you. All right? But he knows already they're going to be making an ask. They're going to be making an ask. And he's saying something none of the Sahaba understood at the time. Whatever they ask me, so long as it's not violating the sanctity of Allah, I will give it to them. I will give it to them. And in this moment, when the Sahaba are filled with Iman because of the miracle of the well, right now they're hearing something that's eventually going to test their Iman. Right? Eventually, when the time comes and the Quraysh are going to ask for stuff, it's going to boil their blood. And this will be helpful in lessening that blow, making this more digestible. Okay. Before I go on, how are you guys doing okay? To finish this part, because we got so much to cover this weekend. So I just want to get through some of the material without doing injustice to any of it, inshallah. So, أن 80 رجلا من أهل مكة هبطوا على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من جبل التنعيم متسلحين. So what happens is they've reached Hudaybiyah. If they cross Hudaybiyah even half a kilometer, a quarter of a mile, if they cross that much, they're in the safe zone. When they're in the safe zone, what's not possible anymore? They can't be attacked. The Quraysh are like, this is serious. We got to end this problem now. One idea is, because they're just sitting there, feeding their animals, relaxing in Hudaybiyah, how about we send 80 assassins, we turban them up so their faces are covered, and go and kill a few of them and stir up some problem, and the animals will scatter and these people will scatter and we'll have dispersed them. So 80 is not enough to kill 1,400, but it's enough to create chaos, isn't it? Like in a civilian environment, when there's an explosion or gunfire or violence, then everybody flees, right? So they're hoping to create that kind of mass chaos by creating this anarchy. And one of the ideas also is, if we get lucky, we might even kill the messenger. So this is also, in a sense, an assassination attempt against the Prophet. So these 80 men from Jabal al-Tan'im, they descend onto Hudaybiyah all of a sudden, masked up, and they start trying to kill as many as possible. يريدون غيرة النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام وأصحابه. They wanted to stir up the Prophet and his companions. فأخذهم سلما فاستحياهم. So the narration describes, the Prophet ﷺ was able to capture all of them safely, meaning no one got hurt, not they, not us. And then he allowed them to live, unmasked them. Oh, because why were they masked? Because then it would be found out that they're from Quraysh, which is bad PR for Quraysh. People came with their sacrificial animals and you're trying to kill them. This is bad PR for them. If they're masked up, they could look like any bandits, because Arabian bandits, So they're not going to be incriminated. They didn't get caught on camera, but now they're all caught on camera and they're all tied up. And the Prophet ﷺ takes all their weapons and then sends them back to Makkah. So now it was already bad PR. This is really, really bad PR now. This is looking very, very bad for them. And this is something Allah describes in the Quran. هُوَ الَّذِي كَفَّ أَيْدِيَهُمْ عَنْكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ عَنْهُمْ بِبَطْنِ مَكَّةِ. He is the one who stopped their hands from reaching you and your hands from reaching them, right at the heart of Makkah, right at the belly of Makkah. Right? Okay. Now, Makkah is the main area and the Quraysh are the main area, but there are other tribes that are adjacent to Makkah. Okay? When I used to live in New York, of course, next to New York is New Jersey, and on the other side, there's Connecticut, right? There are states that are connected to New York, but we don't think of them as much. We don't think of them as human civilization in New York. New York has this pompous, self-arrogant, self-lofty image of itself, and everybody else is the outskirts, So when you say I'm going to the boonies, it means you're going to Connecticut, right? That's when you live in New York, right? The idea is Makkah is the main city, but there's Banu Khuza'a and there's other tribes that are in the area. Taif is there. It's a second big city, right? It's not quite New York City, but it's Jersey City. It's something. Those tribes start getting nervous. They're like, Quraysh might be able to defend itself. We're not going to survive these Muslims, man. We better go figure out our situation for ourselves. We better try to go negotiate with these people. They also know that the Muslims have reached Hudaybiyah. So Budayl ibn Waraqa, or Warqa rather, he's from Khuza'a, so one of the neighboring tribes of Makkah. He's not Makkah itself, he's not Quraysh itself. And he came to try to talk sense into the Muslims. So he wants to ask to meet with the Prophet ﷺ, and he makes a pitch. Here's his pitch. إِنِّي تَرَكْتُ كَعْبَ بْنَ لُؤَيْ وَعَامِرَ بْنَ لُؤَيْ. Listen, I left behind Ka'ab and Amir, sons of Lu'ay. What does that mean? Ka'ab and Amir, sons of Lu'ay, are like their legend warriors, right? So they're like they're Hercules or whatever, right? They're great legendary warriors. And when they say somebody's getting ready to throw down and somebody's getting ready to kill, then I have left Ka'ab ibn Lu'ay and Amir ibn Lu'ay. So his way of saying, you don't understand. Those people in Makkah, I just saw what I saw. Those people are ready to kill all of you. And then he said, وَنَزَلُوا أَعْدَادَ مِيَاهَ الْحُدَيْبِيَّةِ. They're almost at the waters of Hudaybiyah. وَمَعَهُمُ الْعُوذُ وَالْمَطَافِيلِ. And they've brought the pregnant camels with them. What that means is they're even bringing their pregnant women with them, or women and children with them. Remember the logic behind that? They're ready to kill. They don't care. Like they're not going to turn back. This is all-out war. You're not in a position to negotiate. That's what they came and tried to tell him. Or he tried to come and tell him, وَهُمْ مُقَاتِلُوكَ وَصَادُّكَ عَنِ الْبَيْتِ. Listen, they will fight you. There's no way you're getting to the house of Allah. That ain't going to happen. You need to know, most likely what's going to happen is you guys are going to get killed. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Prophet responds to him, أَنَّا لَمْ نَجِئْ لِقِتَالِ أَحَدٍ. We didn't come here to fight anybody. وَلَكِنَّا جِئْنَا مُؤْتَمِرِينَ. But we came here to do Umrah. وَإِنَّ قُرَيْشًا نَهِكَتْهُمُ الْحَرْبُ. But Quraysh, somehow war has become an obsession for them. وَأَضَرَّتْ بِهِمْ. And it's only caused them harm, which is a really cool thing for the Prophet to say. It's caused them harm. It's a very subtle way of taking a shot at, y'all didn't learn at Badr. Y'all got whooped the first half of Uhud. And then remember when you came all the way in Ahzab and then you went back? It's caused them a lot of harm. So, فَإِنْ شَاءُوا مَادَتُّهُمْ مُدَّةً. And look at the courage of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He's in the mouth of the lion and he's saying, if they want, I can give them a little extra time. I can give them an extra time out. يَخُلُّ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ النَّاسِ. They can leave. Meaning he's going to do Umrah for 3 days. They can go up in the mountains and have a barbecue. If they don't want to see my face, they can just leave Makkah if they feel nervous around me. I'll give them extra time to pack their bags and get their tent ready. They can go, and I'm going to go do Umrah. He's not speaking from a position of weakness. He's speaking from a position of power. And then he says, فَإِنْ أَظْهَرْ فَإِنْ شَاءُوا. And if they want to stand up, stand firm, فَإِنْ شَاءُوا أَنْ يَدْخُلُوا فِي مَا دَخَلَ فِيهِ النَّاسِ فَعَلُوا. If they want to go somewhere where people usually go, wherever you want to go and get away from the city, go ahead, do it. وَإِلَّا فَقَدْ جَمُّوا. And if they don't want to do that, then they're the ones being stubborn. وَإِنْهُمْ أَبَوْا. And if they refuse, فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ. Then I swear by the one whose life is in my hands, لَأُقَاتِلَنَّهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَمْرِي هَذَا حَتَّى تَنْفَرِدَ سَالِفَتِي وَلَيُنْفِذَنَّ اللَّهُ أَمْرَهُ. I will fight them. I will establish this mission. I will complete this mission until this, remember this statement before? Until this is gone, until this is separated, or Allah will make this matter happen Himself. Like either you deal with me, or you might have to deal with the wrath of Allah Himself. But that's just what's going to happen. This is his negotiation response. So he hears this. He says, "سَأُبَلِّغُهُمْ مَا تَقُولُ." He says, "Okay, I'm gonna go tell them what you said." He's not from Quraysh. Remember, he's from Khuza'a. But he's gonna go tell who what they said. The Quraysh. So he's gonna go to Quraysh. قال فانطلق حتى أتى قريش. So he left until he reached Quraysh. قال إنا قد جئناكم من هذا الرجل. He says, "Hey, we've come to you from this man." Who are they referring to? This man, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. وسمعناه يقول قولا. And we heard him say something. فإن شئتم أن نعرضه عليكم فعلنا. They said, if you want us to tell you what they said, we'll do it. He's saying, look, it's none of my business. It's between you and Muhammad. We just wanted to go figure things out for ourselves, but they told us some things. Even though it's none of our business, if you want to hear what he told us, we can tell you. فقال سفهاؤهم لا حاجة لنا أن تخبرنا عنه بشيء. Some of the idiots in Makkah said, we don't need you to tell us anything about him. We can take care of ourselves. What he said, what he didn't say, doesn't matter. وقال ذو الرأي منهم. And the people that were smart among them, the politicians, they said, هاتي ما سمعته يقول. Hey, what did he say? So some of the angry ones, the thugs, like, we don't need to hear what he said. And the other one said, no, let's hear it. So, سمعته يقول كذا وكذا. فحدثهم بما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he told them everything the Prophet ﷺ said. Now the Quraysh know the Prophet's not playing around. He's not here to negotiate in the sense that he's not going to be turned back. Okay. Now the Quraysh still have too much pride. They are not going to let the Prophet ﷺ go to Makkah, and they don't want to dignify him by speaking to him directly. They still won't talk to him. They're still trying to figure out what to do. In the meantime, Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi is one of the tribes in Ta'if, neighboring city, right? He says, you know what, I'm going to go talk to them. And they're okay with that because they save face, right? They don't have to deal with him directly. They send somebody from Ta'if to deal with him. So Urwa goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Urwa, you should know, is a multimillionaire. He's a very rich person. And at some point, he needed to borrow some money. And he had borrowed money from Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Which tells you what kind of money Abu Bakr used to have radiallahu anhu. Because if one of the leaders of Taif, big money Taif, is borrowing money, they're borrowing money from Abu Bakr said, that's not no $20. Okay, so that's serious cash that he borrowed at some point, and he never paid it back. I didn't pay it back. We'll get to that. قال عروة عند ذلك أي محمد. So Urwa, he's a politician. He's a big deal in his city. He talks like he's a VIP, and he sees Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's not going to talk to him like he respects him. So he says, hey, Muhammad. This is how he speaks to him. أرأيت إن استأصلت أمر قومك هل سمعت بأحد من العرب اجتاح أهله قبلك? You really think you are going to uproot your own people? Have you seen anyone among the Arabs do this to their own family? This is how he starts talking to the Prophet. Because he's saying you're an embarrassment to the Quraysh. You're hurting your own family. How are you uprooting your own people? You're not loyal to your own people. One of the reasons he's also saying this is because he sees around the Prophet ﷺ people from all different tribes. And he sees slaves. And he sees people that have never been together. And he sees people whose families have been at war with each other for centuries, but now they're brothers praying together and eating together. And he's like, well, who are these people? What is this? And you're going against your family for these people? So وَإِن تَكُنِ الْأُخْرَى فَإِنِّي وَاللَّهِ لَأَرَى وُجُوهًا وَإِنِّي لَأَرَى أُوشَابًا مِنَ النَّاسِ خَلِيقًا أَنْ يَفِرُّوا وَيَدَعُوكَ. He says, man, I don't know what you're doing here. Listen, I see people around you. I see people around you. And I see the variety around, the colors around you. That if push comes to shove, if it gets real, if the battle heats up, these are the people that are going to run away from you. They're about as diverse as a bus stop, right? Because in his mind, who's loyal to you? Your tribe. People that wear your flag, people that have your background, your lineage, family first. That's the tribal way, right? These people are from different nationalities, different tribal backgrounds, even some of them different previous religions. They all have different histories. Some of them didn't even like each other for a long time. Some of them had been on opposite ends of the battlefield before. And now they're standing next to you. He's not going to be loyal to you. He doesn't understand what Islam does to people. He's never seen it. For thousands of years, the Arabs have never seen it. No nation had seen it. Everyone's loyal to their own people. And for the first time, these people have forgotten thousands of years of tribal history, and the thing that bonds them is thicker than any blood, is Islam. It's not something he can comprehend. He doesn't get it. He can't understand it. So when he does this, he says this, قال له أبو بكر الصديق. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq spoke out. And I'm not going to read what he said. But he said something really, really offensive. He said something rated R. Okay? And he said it, and there are some kids in the audience I see, but it's also a masjid, so out of respect, I'm not going to say it, but it was basically, if it would be said, it would be bleeped out. Like beep, beep, beep. Basically. And this is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the nicest, quietest, calmest Sahabi of all. And he hears this man talk to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these people are going to follow you. Shame on you. And he says, boop, boop, boop. And he's like, أَنَحْنُ نَفِرُّ عَنْهُ وَنَدَعُهُ. We're going to leave him. We're going to run away from him. This is what the Abu Bakr as-Siddiq out of his rage said. فَقَالَ مَنْ ذَا? He said, who said that? Because it's a crowd, right? Abu Bakr is in the crowd, but he didn't see who said it. He's like, who said that? فَقَالُوا Abu Bakr. They said, Abu Bakr said it. Because even everybody else must have been like, Abu Bakr. Like, what is this? قال أما والذي نفسي بيده لولا يد كانت لك عندي لم أجزك بها لأجبتك. He said, I swear by the one whose life is in my hand, meaning I swear to God, if I didn't owe you money, I would have answered you. Remember he borrowed money before? And basically he considered, now we're even. I ain't got to pay you back now. Because you paid me with this, I paid you by listening to you cuss me out in front of everyone, right? So, فَاتَّفِقَ عُرْوَةٌ وَهُوَ يُكَلِّمُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يَمُسُّ لِحْيَتَهُ. Listen to this carefully. Urwa is a politician, like a governor. Back in the day when the elders were speaking to each other, and when they're speaking to someone lesser, and they don't feel like they're not listening, they would grab the beard of the one who's not listening and say, hey, listen to what I'm saying. This was their way of negotiation. This was common. And the ones who were elites were used to doing this and getting away with it. Right? So, he's speaking to the Prophet ﷺ and he tries to what? Grab his beard. Now, Mughira radiallahu anhu, he's got a helmet on. I'll read it to you. قائم على رأس رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالسيف. Mughira is standing right at the head of the Prophet ﷺ, and his head is covered. وعلى وجهه المغفر. He's got a helmet over his head, so you can't see his face. So he's a warrior, a guard. His name is Mughira. He's standing behind the Prophet ﷺ. فاتفق المغيرة كلما مس لحية رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قرع يده ويقول اكفف يدك عن مس لحية رسول الله. So he says, every time he tried to reach for the beard, he would take the butt of the bottom of the sword handle and smack his hand. And he's like, huh. And a few minutes into the negotiation, he reaches his hand and gets his hand smacked again. 2, 3 times. The third time he said, get your hand away from the beard of the Prophet ﷺ قَبْلَ أَلَّا تَصِلَ إِلَيْكَ, before it can never reach even yourself. Keep your hand to yourself or you ain't going to have a hand left. And nobody's ever spoken to Urwa in this way before. This guy is, you don't talk to them like that. They're the elites. So he says, فَلَمَّا أَكْثَرَ عَلَيْهِ غَضَبْ عُرْوَةَ فَقَالْ لَيْتَ شَعْرِي. When Urwa was humiliated and furious, he says, are you serious? Is this really happening? Man anta ya Muhammad? Who are you, Muhammad? He's basically saying, who do you think you are? And then he says, وَمَنْ هَذَا الَّذِي أَرَى مِنْ بَيْنِ أَصْحَابِكَ? And who's this that dared to do this to me among your companions? Who's this behind you who hit me? فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم said, هذا ابن أخيك المغيرة ibn Sha'ba. This is your nephew Mughira ibn Sha'ba. Because he had a helmet on, right? Hey uncle, what's up? فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هذا ابن أخيك المغيرة ابن شعبة. قال وأنت بذلك يا غدر والله ما غسلت عنك عذرك إلا بعلابة أمس لقد ورثت. So he says, you're a traitor to me. I will never forget this. So he's really, really upset. He knows this negotiation is not going anywhere. First of all, he got cursed out by Abu Bakr Siddiq. Then he got smacked down by his own nephew. He was like, I can't. I have no clout with these people. I have no way to get ahead with these people. So he goes back to his people. فقال يا أي قوم. We're going to stop with this one. He says, people, والله لقد وفدت على الملوك. He said, I have been an ambassador to kings in the world. I've traveled the world. I've been an ambassador, an emissary in the courts of kings. وفدت على قيصر وكسرى. I've seen the Roman king and I've seen the Persian king, the great superpowers of the time. والنجاشي and the Abyssinian king. والله إن رأيت ملكا قط. I have never seen in my life any king يعظمه أصحابه ما يعظم أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم محمدا. I have never seen any people of the king honor their king, aggrandize their king, deem their king's regard their king's greatness the way Muhammad's followers consider his greatness. I've never even seen this in the courts of kings. والله إن تنخم نخامة إلا وقعت في كف رجل منهم. This is him exaggerating in poetic speech, but you get the point. He said, even if this man was to spit, it would land in one of his followers' hands. They wouldn't let it touch the ground. فَذَلِكَ بِهَا وَجْهُهُ وَجِلْدُهُ. And if a drop of sweat fell from his skin or his face, they would catch it with their hands. وَإِذَا أَمَرَهُمْ ابْتَدَرُوا أَمْرَهُ. And if when he commands them to do something, they're competing with each other, who's going to follow it first. وَإِذَا تَوَضَّأَ كَادُوا يَقْتَتِلُونَ عَلَى وُضُوئِهِ. When he washes his face, it's like they're going to kill each other to catch the drops of water from him. وَإِذَا تَكَلَّمَ خَفَضُوا أَصْوَاتَهُمْ عِنْدَهُ. And when he speaks, they humble their voices before him. وَمَا يُحِدُّونَ إِلَيْهِ النَّظَرَ تَعْظِيمًا لَهُ. And none of them even raises their eyebrows and bulges their eyes at him because they think of him so great. They don't even make aggressive eye contact with him. Even the way they look at him, the look has humility in it. وَإِنَّهُ قَدْ عَرَضَ عَلَيْكُمْ خُطَّةَ رُشْدٍ فَاقْبِلُوهُ. Listen, he's giving you a good suggestion, just take it. This is Urwa telling them, listen, he's making sense. He's not talking crazy. But he didn't just say that. He said, look, his followers, too strong, bro. And if push comes to shove, I don't see you guys keeping your followers. He's going to keep his. Your people will run from you. His people aren't going to run from him. So he says, اقبلوا ما عرض فإني لكم ناصح. He says to them, listen, whatever he's offering, take it. I'm on your side here. What's good for you is you listen to what Muhammad is saying. مع أني أخاف ألا تنصروا عليه, because I'm scared that when it comes to it, you're not going to You're not going to have the help you need to fight against him. رجل أتى هذا البيت معظما له معه الهدي ينحره وينصرف. He says he's a man who came to this house just to show respects to the Kaaba. He's going to come, he's going to slaughter the animal, and he's going to leave. It says, it's that simple. And they said, I'll leave you guys with this. They said to him, لا تكلم بهذا يا أبا يعفور. They said, Abu Ya'fur is his nickname. They said, don't talk like this. Come on, we respect you. Why are you breaking like this? لو غيرك تكلم بهذا للناه. If somebody else was speaking like this, we would have dealt with him differently. But we respect you. How can you talk like this? ولكن نرده عن البيت في عامنا هذا ويرجع إلى قابل. They said, okay, fine. You know what? He's not coming this year, but maybe next year we'll let him. So already the Quraysh are starting to break, isn't it? Because we started with, they will never let you even see the Kaaba. They will fight you. They will kill you. They've got their swords sharpened. Their women and children are ready to die. And now they're like, okay, not this year, next year, okay? And so the weakness is starting to show. There's chinks in the armor starting to show. We'll take a break here. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. There are almost 50,000 students around the world that are interested, on top of the students we have, in studying the Quran and its meanings and being able to learn that and share that with family and friends. And they need sponsorships, which is not very expensive. So if you can help sponsor students on Bayyinah TV, please do so and visit our sponsorship page. I appreciate it so much and pray that Allah gives our mission success and we're able to share the meanings of the Quran and the beauty of it the world over.